Let's talk about an unfortunate news coming from Telangana. 8 students have died by suicide within 24 hours after the declaration of the intermediate exams, which are equivalent to class 11th and 12th. Now, less than 2 weeks ago, 9 students died by suicide in Andhra Pradesh within 48 hours of declaration of class 11th and 12th exam results in April. Now, Telangana has a history of student deaths by suicide after the declaration of intermediate exam results. In December 2021, after 6 students died by suicide, the government had declared everyone as passed to reduce the stress on students. My colleague Uma Sudhir is joining us for more details. And Uma, it's extremely unfortunate to see what's happening. And if we talk about the exam stress, the pass percentage there in Telangana for the exams equivalent to class 12 is just around 63 to 64%. While if you compare it with CBSE, it's around 92 to 93%. So what are the reasons that some experts point to, and is there a concerning trend that's emerging there in Telangana?
It's been very, very distressing that year after year, after the intermediate board exam results are declared, we are seeing this kind of spate of suicides. And what is even more worrying is that even after the government has come forward and set up helplines, they have said that they have set up specific cells that will be working around the clock 24/7. Despite that, it obviously does not seem to be reaching the students for who this is very, very critically required. Like you mentioned, 9.48 lakh students sat for the intermediate class 11 and class 12 exams. Both class 11 and class 12 are board exams. So the stress you can imagine is huge. And out of this, more than 3 lakh, actually 3,55,000 students have not passed the exam, which means 1 in every 3 students is not passing the exam. And like you pointed out, whether you compare it with the central board or other state boards as well, this seems to be quite a pathetic number to talk about. And if you see the boys and the girls ratio, among the girls, the pass percentage is still 70%. Among the boys, it's only 55%. And then they are failing the exam, and then immediately afterwards we are seeing these spate of suicide deaths that are being reported. As many as 6 have been reported from Hyderabad itself and from the other districts, Nizamabad as well. We had from Vanaparthi and nearby districts as well. We have heard of more students in fact attempting suicide and thankfully being saved. 3 things that I must point out here. In 2019, there were as many as 25 students who died by suicide, after which it became a kind of an emergency for the government to look at it, and they did put in a lot of counseling sessions. They brought in counselors, professional psychologists, all of that. And yet year after year, of course, the COVID pandemic came after that, when everyone passed in one particular year. And the next year, the government in fact tried to put a provisional exam, said everyone promoted from class 11, but before you take your class 12, there will be provisional exams, in which again there were failures, and at least 6 students had died in December 2021, after which in fact the government decided that they are not going to be having exams, and that everyone is deemed as promoted in order to stop this kind of stress relief. Let's also talk to some experts who have been looking at this very, very closely. First, I will introduce Professor Jyotsna Tirunagari, who is otherwise an academic, but right now also spokesperson for the Telugu Desam Party nationally. We also have Dr. Praveen, who's a psychologist, who's joining us. First, Jyotsna, since 2000, for years now actually, and specifically in 2019 as well, we have been focusing on the intermediate board results and the fact that such huge numbers. At that time, of course, we spoke about software errors, and there could be technical errors in the way the results were computed. What is going wrong?
Uma, I think the main problem lies with the mindset. I think I should say it. When I say mindset, it's the student mindset as well as the parent mindset and the academic mindset of the teachers and the organizations, the institutions that we are talking about. Here, when as an academician also, we are in no way that, there is no situation wherein we can actually talk to the students in the emotional quotient perspective. We cannot talk to the student. Everything is peer pressure for them. Everything is parental pressure for them. Everything is societal pressure for them. So as a society also, we are mounting that pressure on them. And they are, we are talking about teenagers wherein they probably don't even understand what's happening with them. They think this is life and this is just it. And even during in 2019 when we discussed, at that particular point of time also, we said the government should come up with, measures which would increase the emotional quotient of the student, increase and, improvise the emotional quotient of the student, which we are failing even till date. When we talk about 65 to 67% of pass percentage, where are we heading? Why is there that lack? Where is the problem? Is it in the teaching methodology, or is it in the institutions infrastructure lack, or where the government and also the institutions are lacking to identify where the problem lies in? At the end of the day, we are talking about students committing
Professor
suicide.
Jyotsna, let me just also bring in Dr. Praveen Chintalapudi. Dr. Praveen, we have been seeing these kind of suicide deaths, whether it is Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, of course, also in educations of higher learning. In Telangana, there were several measures in fact which were put in place, and there were counseling centers that were set up. Every institution is supposed to have counselors. Where are we going wrong that these students decide that if they are not able to pass an exam, or they are afraid that they are not going to do well in an exam? We in fact had a very tragic case of a student who was in fact a tribal hostel student. He scored 89.2, but fearing that he is not going to do well, he in fact died by suicide in April. How are we to approach this? Because this is not actually a problem limited to Telangana, even though we are talking big numbers here as of now.
Thank you for inviting me, Uma. I'm a psychiatrist, by the way, and my deepest condolences to the families who have lost their children. This has been a routine annual affair, especially for Telangana and prior to that erstwhile Andhra Pradesh state, wherein you would see a spate of suicides immediately after the results, and there is a sense of preparedness which was needed by the governments then to address these issues. But I think we as a society have failed our children, and not just these 8 children, but the potential lives which are due to be lost. And in the recent past, we have seen lots of medical students commit suicide as well. That was a few weeks ago, not long ago. A student from Nizamabad, a medical student, died recently. So there seems to be an issue. We have a problem culturally within Telangana. I'm not saying that it's a bad thing, but it's something which we have to acknowledge and address. Whenever there is something which doesn't go wrong, riots commit suicide, farmers commit suicide. And whenever a politician wants to threaten, he threatens suicide. And this seems to be something which comes spontaneously. When Telangana agitation took place, lots of youngsters lost their lives to suicide. And there seems to be something which has to be addressed culturally, 1. 2, I think it's very important that we need to sensitize and prime our children to say that this is just an exam with some numbers which don't mean anything in long run.
Absolutely.
I don't think, my life is going to be decided by how much I scored in intermediate. If I score 89%, a child dies from a tribal background with 89%. That's something which is reflective of our society. I think we are to be blamed. And I think it's very important at the outset, every school should have a counselor where children can be picked up much in advance. The vulnerable kids who are likely to hurt themselves or likely to do something extreme are picked up and then helped in advance. 2, as the exams are announced, I think it's very sad. In comparison to other states, I'm surprised at the results. 1/3 fail. That's something which is very tragic. Is it a failure of the education system? It's not. It's not the failure of the children. It's a failure of the system rather than children. And children seem to be the symptom of a pathology which is existent in the society. So, society, we need to address that. Education or academic numbers are mere numbers which are going to be reflective of your performance on that particular day, and not about you as a person as a whole. 2, the psychological mindedness, as we call it. Life is something bigger than the exam and something to be cherished about. And one adverse event doesn't make you a failure in your life. I think this preparedness has to go in at every stage, every day, with the children from day one. And it happens even after entrance results. I think when we get NEET results, when we get IIT main results, I think this is, especially for the states of Telangana and especially for the urban city of Hyderabad. This is
Right.
a big thing. Actually, I'm surprised it doesn't happen in certain parts of the country at all. Like there are suicide-free states, I must say, especially around results. You would not even have one suicide reported, and we have 8 suicides within 24 hours of a result. I think there is something pathologically wrong within the system we have.
Right. It is a collective failure of both the system and the society. As you pointed out, the obsession that we have with exam results is it's just unreasonable, and it puts undue pressure on these students. And it's important to point out that we have enough examples to show that these exam results do not define your career, and you can go ahead and do whatever you want to, even if your exam results don't match your expectations or the expectations of your parents or family. And Dr. Isidore Phillips is also joining us. He's a director at Divya Disha. And Dr. Phillips, we've spoken about what schools and governments have done to tackle this issue. And it is a failure, as Dr. Praveen pointed out, of the system. So is there more that needs to be done in terms of the number of counsellors that are available in schools? And instead of students trying to approach counsellors, should the approach be different? Should counsellors reach out to all the students to try and figure out if anybody might be internally dealing with any issues?
I think at the outset, let's agree on one thing. Yes, there is a systemic failure of the system. Okay, there is multiple issues. Invariably, whenever suicides happen, we tend to focus on children. It's good to focus on children because we're talking of access to services. We're looking at counseling, what kind of IQ, EQ scale, the emotional quotient scales, everything is fine. But I think we are also looking at a larger malaise. The way we have pitched education. We are looking at Telangana and Andhra. We are looking at multiple places across the country. Student suicides are not going down. It means something is seriously wrong in the way we have pitched education. Children are appearing at one level. There are some institutions, 99% is a cutoff. 99 point whatever, you lose a seat, things like that. And at the other end, we have a massive amount of failures. It also points out that there is a paradox within the system, and we need to correct the paradoxes. Point number 1. Point number 2, another panelist actually pointed out to this issue of in terms of something is seriously wrong within our school system. Maybe the way the teaching methodology happens, the way teachers interact with the children. This is a space that needs to be addressed. We are looking forever, the focus is always on the counselor. The focus doesn't seem to be in terms of what the teacher is doing with the class. Because at the end of the day, who is accountable for the failure? Here's a question that you and I have to answer. If children are going to school, if young people are going to school today, if some of them are paying fees, some of them are going for free education, but at the end of the day, somebody fails, we need to ask this question of saying, why is it that failures are always the student's responsibility and institutions are not accountable for the failures of children? Now, this is a question that we need to answer. And the third thing, what is it the governments need to do? Government needs to do more.
Right.
One, government needs to actually pitch education as a larger exercise, because if you look at education, how do we define education as the development of children? But at the end of the day, we always come back to statistics, numbers. You got 9.5 GPA, 10 GPA, 8 GPA, 7 GPA. Excuse me, are you planning to define children with these GPAs? GPA is one aspect. We always talk about all-round development. We talk about comprehensive evaluation. But evaluation that we talk about in the boardroom has not percolated into the progress reports of children. And I think as long as we do not, educationists and policymakers do not make that shift, our children will they will pay, and it's a very, very costly thing that we are bearing. So many children we are losing year after year. 35 suicides a year in this country every day is not a joke.
Right. I think the point is loud and clear. It needs to be said more often than it is currently, that the numbers on a report card do not define a student's career and do not define their future. Thanks very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us. And if I tell you how big this problem is, in 2020, 12,526 students died by suicide. And in 2021, that number rose to 13,089. That's how big the problem is.